The first blow came before Jamal Harris understood he was in danger. A hard shove. His shoulder slammed into the hood of the patrol car, metal cold through his thin hoodie. Red and blue lights washed the street in violent color, turning the quiet corner store into a stage. Jamal's ears rang. Somewhere nearby, a siren wailed and then cut off. He tasted blood and copper and fear. "I didn't do anything," he said, voice cracking despite himself. Officer Cole Brennan didn't answer right away. He adjusted his grip, fingers digging into Jamal's arm as if testing how much pressure a body could take before it broke. Brennan's face was calm. "Bored, even. You kids always say that," Brennan muttered. People stood on the sidewalk pretending not to watch. A woman pulled her child closer. A man lifted his phone, then lowered it again when Brennan glanced his way. Jamal's heart hammered. He thought of his mother waiting for him to get home. He thought of the envelope in his backpack, unopened, heavy with a future he hadn't dared imagine yet. Brennan leaned in close, breath warm with coffee and something bitter. His voice dropped, sharp and private. "Learn your place." The baton struck Jamal's ribs. Air exploded out at him. The world tilted, fractured into flashing lights and concrete, and the sound of his own breath breaking apart. As Brennan raised the baton again, Jamal saw a black SUV roll to a stop at the corner. Tinted windows. Silent. Watching. One of the windows slid down, and someone inside whispered a name that did not belong on this street. Not in this moment. Not like this. Harris. Brennan froze. Jamal Harris knew the street well enough to relax. That was the mistake. The corner store's neon sign buzzed above him, flickering between open and something broken. He adjusted the straps of his backpack and checked his phone. 10 minutes from home. His mother would already be worrying. A police cruiser rolled past. Slow. Jamal felt it before he saw it. The way the air shifted, the way his shoulders tightened without permission. The cruiser stopped, tires side against asphalt. "Hey!" a voice called. "You." Jamal turned. The officer was already out of the car, tall, broad, one hand resting casually near his belt. "Where you headed?" the officer asked. "Home," Jamal said. He kept his voice even. Neutral, the way his uncle had taught him. The officer looked him up and down. "What's in the bag?" "School stuff." "Open it." Jamal hesitated. Not long. Just enough. That was enough. The officer stepped closer. "I said open it." "I didn't do anything wrong," Jamal said. The officer's jaw tightened. "Turn around." "I didn't." The shove came fast. Jamal hit the hood of the cruiser, breath leaving him in a sharp burst. "Hands!" "Now." Pain bloomed in his shoulder as his arm was twisted back. Jamal's cheek pressed against cold metal. Red and blue light strode across his vision. "Stop resisting," the officer said calmly. "I'm not resisting." Jamal shouted. A baton cracked against his ribs. The sound surprised him more than the pain. A dull, final thud. He gasped, lungs refusing to cooperate. "Learn," the officer said quietly, "to listen." People gathered at a distance. Jamal saw shoes. A phone lifted, then lowered. "Please," Jamal said. He hated the word as soon as it left his mouth. The officer didn't respond. Another strike. Jamal cried out this time. Sirens wailed somewhere else, indifferent. "Name," the officer asked, as if they were having a conversation. "Jamal Harris." The officer paused. Just a fraction. Then the baton rose again. A black SUV rolled to a stop nearby. Jamal barely noticed. His world had narrowed to pain and light and breath. The window slid down. "Harris," a voice said. The officer froze. He turned slowly. "You know this kid." The sub's engine idled. The voice didn't answer right away. "Yes," it said. "Very well." Jamal blacked out before he could see who spoke. He woke to white ceilings and antiseptic. His ribs burned. His wrists ached. A nurse avoided his eyes. "You're lucky," she said. "No internal bleeding." "Am I under arrest?" Jamal asked. "For now." An officer stood near the door, different from the first. Younger. Nervous. "You swung first," the officer said, reading from a clipboard. "That's not true." The officer didn't look up. That's what it says. His mother arrived an hour later, face tight with fear she was trying not to show. I want a lawyer, she said. The officer sighed. Of course. A man in a gray suit arrived instead. Not a public defender. Too polished. He looked at Jamal carefully. Did anyone tell you who your father was? Jamal frowned. What? The man smiled thinly. Rest. We'll talk soon. He left before Jamal could ask another question. Later, alone, Jamal stared at the ceiling. Every breath hurt. Outside, somewhere, sirens wailed again. And Jamal understood something clearly for the first time. This was bigger than him. The police station smelled like old coffee and disinfectant, a place scrubbed clean of responsibility. Jamal sat beside his mother on a hard plastic chair, his ribs wrapped tight beneath his hoodie. Every breath reminded him of the baton. Every blink replayed the sound it made. His mother, Denise Harris, hadn't stopped holding his hand since they walked in. A man in a navy suit finally appeared, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Harris. Jamal, I'm Lieutenant Avery. Internal Affairs. Denise stood immediately. We're filing a complaint. Avery nodded, practiced. Of course. Let's talk. They were led into a small room with a table bolted to the floor. Jamal noticed there were no windows. Avery sat across from them, folding his hands neatly. Officer Brennan reports that Jamal was acting suspiciously, Avery said. There was resistance. That's a lie, Jamal said. Avery tilted his head. I understand this is emotional. Denise leaned forward. My son was beaten. Avery sighed softly, as if burdened by the inconvenience of truth. We take all allegations seriously. Allegations. Denise snapped. You saw his ribs. You saw his face. Avery nodded again. Medical reports can be subjective. Jamal felt something cold settle in his stomach. There were witnesses. We've spoken to a few, Avery said. Unfortunately, accounts vary. Someone filmed it, Jamal said. Avery's eyes flicked up for the first time. The clip we've seen doesn't show the full interaction. Because it cuts off, Denise said. Because people are scared. Avery smiled thinly. Fear goes both ways. Denise stared at him. What does that mean? It means officers work under pressure, Avery replied calmly. Mistakes can happen. Mistakes? Jamal repeated. His voice shook despite his effort. He hit me. Avery closed the folder. Officer Brennan has been placed on temporary desk duty pending review. Denise let out a bitter laugh. That's it. For now. For now, Jamal echoed. Avery stood. We'll be in touch. The story broke online before Jamal made it home. A 30-second clip. Grainy. Cropped. Jamal seen pulling his arm back just before the baton strike. No audio. No lead-up. No aftermath. The caption read, Teen resists arrest during police stop. At school the next day, whispers followed him like shadows. That's him. He shouldn't have fought. He looks fine to me. Jamal sat through class without hearing a word. His phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from people he didn't know. Should have listened. Play stupid games. You're lucky you're alive. A teacher pulled him aside. Maybe take a few days off. For what? Jamal asked. For everyone's sake. At lunch, his friend Marcus sat down quietly. You okay? Jamal shrugged. I don't know. Marcus hesitated. My dad says cops don't just do that. Jamal looked at him. He did. Marcus nodded slowly, ashamed. Yeah. Denise watched the news at night, jaw clenched. The anchor's tone was neutral, but the framing wasn't. Authorities said the incident is under review. Jamal sat on the couch, ribs throbbing, watching his own face reduced to a headline. They're controlling it, Denise said. The story. I don't even recognize myself, Jamal replied. A knock came at the door. 2 men stood outside. Suits. One familiar. The gray-suited lawyer from the hospital stepped forward. Ms. Harris. She crossed her arms. Who are you? Elliot Crane, he said. I represent an estate that has taken a personal interest in Jamal's case. Jamal frowned. Why? Crane studied him. Because the truth matters. Denise's voice sharpened. Is this about money? Crane didn't answer directly. May we talk privately? No, Denise said. You can talk now or not at all. Crane nodded. Fair enough. Jamal, were you aware your father passed away last month? Jamal stiffened. My father left. Crane's expression softened slightly. He didn't forget you. He handed Jamal a sealed envelope. Open it when you're ready, Crane said. But understand this, what happened to you last night wasn't random. Denise stepped between them. You're saying the police knew. Crane met her eyes. I'm saying systems recognize vulnerability, and sometimes they test it. He left without another word. The next morning, Officer Brennan returned to patrol. Desk duty, it turned out, was flexible. Jamal saw the cruiser outside his school when he arrived late. Brennan stood by it, laughing with another officer. Their eyes met. Brennan's smile didn't fade. That night, Denise called the precinct. Why is he back on the street? A bored voice answered. No formal suspension. So my son doesn't matter. There was a pause. We've advised Jamal to cooperate in the future. Denise slammed the phone down. Jamal sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope. Don't open it if you don't want to, Denise said quietly. He picked it up anyway. It felt heavier than paper should. Outside, a siren passed, slow and deliberate. Jamal understood now what silence was. It wasn't empty. It was enforced. Jamal waited until midnight to open the envelope. The apartment was quiet in the way that only came after exhaustion. His mother slept on the couch, the television still glowing low, news muted but persistent. Jamal sat at the kitchen table under the flickering light, ribs aching every time he leaned forward. The envelope was thick, expensive paper. His name printed cleanly, formally. He slid a finger under the seal. Inside were documents, legal language, letterhead he didn't recognize, and a photograph. A man stood in the photo beside a black glass building that scraped the sky. Tall, dark-skinned, older, familiar in a way Jamal couldn't explain. His chest tightened. The letter was brief. Jamal Harris is the sole surviving heir to the estate of Nathaniel Harris. Jamal read it twice, 3 times. No, he whispered. Nathaniel Harris. The name echoed faintly in his memory, buried under years of avoidance. His mother never spoke it unless forced. When Jamal was younger, he'd asked once. She'd said only, he made his choice. The next page listed assets. Companies. Numbers so large they stopped meaning anything. Billionaire. Jamal pushed back from the table, breath shallow. This isn't real. Denise stirred. Jamal. He slid the papers toward her. Read. She sat up slowly, eyes scanning the page. Her face drained of color. They found us, she said. They didn't, Jamal replied. He did, from the grave. Denise closed her eyes. I wanted to protect you. From what? From becoming a transaction. Jamal laughed once, sharp and humorless. I got beaten anyway. The phone rang at 8 in the morning. Crane's voice was calm. Did you read it? Yes. Good. Then we should meet. I'm not interested, Jamal said. Crane paused. Officer Brennan is scheduled to return to full duty today. Jamal's grip tightened. When? An hour. Where? Crane named the precinct. I'll be there, Jamal said. He hung up. Denise grabbed her keys. We're not doing this alone. They arrived to flashing cameras. Not for Jamal. For Crane. Reporters clustered around the sidewalk as black SUVs lined the curb. Jamal stayed close to his mother. Hood pulled low. A reporter shouted, Mr. Crane, is it true the Harris estate is involved? Crane smiled. Truth is a way of arriving late. Inside, the precinct hummed with tension. Lieutenant Avery stiffened when he saw Crane. This is highly irregular. So was the assault, Crane replied. Brennan stood near a desk, arms crossed. His eyes flicked to Jamal, then away. Crane placed a folder on the counter. We're filing a civil suit and requesting federal oversight. Avery's jaw tightened. Based on evidence you failed to preserve, Crane interrupted, and on Jamal Harris's status as. Jamal spoke before he could stop himself. Don't. Crane looked at him. I don't want them treating me different because of money, Jamal said. I want them to treat me right because I'm human. The room went quiet. Brennan snorted softly. Kid's got a mouth. Jamal stepped forward. You hit me. Brennan shrugged. You resisted. I didn't. You always say that. Crane's voice cut through. Officer Brennan, effective immediately, you are relieved of duty pending federal investigation. Brennan laughed. By who? Him. Crane slid another document forward. By the Department of Justice. Brennan's laughter died. The story broke an hour later. Teen in viral arrest revealed as Billionaire Heir. The tone changed instantly. The same anchors who had questioned Jamal's behavior now spoke of disturbing footage and systemic issues. The crop clip was replaced by full body cam video. Sound, lead up, aftermath. The baton strike echoed across screens nationwide. Jamal watched from his bedroom, nausea curling in his stomach. That's me, he said. Denise sat beside him. You don't have to watch. I do. Messages flooded his phone again. Different now. I'm so sorry. This shouldn't have happened. Justice for Jamal. He threw the phone onto the bed. They didn't change. The story did. Crane arrived that evening with a security detail Jamal didn't want. You're not safe, Crane said. I was never safe, Jamal replied. Crane, Saturday, your father tried to change things quietly. He failed. Then why does this feel wrong? Jamal asked. Why does it feel like I cheated? Because power exposes hypocrisy, Crane said. It doesn't create it. Denise spoke softly. What happens now? Crane looked at Jamal. That depends on you. Brennan was home when the knock came. Federal agents. No cameras this time. Jamal didn't go inside. He stood across the street, watching from the SUV. Brennan was handcuffed without ceremony. Their eyes met again. This time, Brennan looked away first. Jamal didn't feel victory. He felt hollow. Later, alone, he sat on his bed staring at the photo from the envelope. The man who shared his face. His blood. His money. I didn't ask for this, Jamal said to the empty room. The city outside hummed, indifferent. Somewhere, a siren wailed. And Jamal understood something else now. Power didn't erase pain. It only decided who was allowed to speak about it. The first settlement offer arrived before Jamal finished breakfast. Crane slid the folder across the kitchen table without ceremony. City attorneys. Quiet resolution. Jamal didn't open it. How quiet? No admission of wrongdoing. Monetary compensation. Non-disclosure. Denise's jaw tightened. They want to buy silence. They want to buy time, Crane corrected. Silence is a bonus. Jamal pushed the folder back. No. Crane studied him. This would be more money than most families see in a lifetime. They already took enough, Jamal said. Crane nodded once. Then we proceed the hard way. The hard way came with cameras. Jamal couldn't step outside without them now. Reporters shouted his name like it belonged to them. Headlines followed him, reshaping him. Billionaire Heir speaks out. Privilege meets police brutality. Is justice different for the rich? He read none of them fully. The words blurred together, flattening him into an argument instead of a person. At school, teachers suddenly smiled too much. Take all the time you need, the principal said. We're proud of your bravery. Bravery. Jamal sat in the same chair where, a week earlier, a counselor had suggested he reflect on his behavior. Marcus leaned against the locker beside him. Man, this is wild. Jamal shrugged. It's the same. Marcus hesitated. People are listening now. That's the problem, Jamal replied. They weren't before. At the precinct, the mood had shifted from confidence to containment. Lieutenant Avery sat with city attorneys, voices low, doors closed. Officers avoided eye contact in the halls. Brennan's locker was emptied quietly, like erasing a name might erase a pattern. A young officer whispered to another, if he wasn't rich. Shut up, the other hissed. Crane requested records. Complaints. Use of force reports. Body cam gaps. They came slowly. Redacted. Incomplete. Missing files, Crane noted. Again. Denise stared at the paperwork. How many before Jamal? Crane didn't answer immediately, enough to establish habit. Jamal looked up. Then why wasn't he stopped? Because systems don't correct themselves, Crane said. They wait to be forced. The city held a press conference. The mayor stood at a podium beneath a banner reading commitment to accountability. He spoke of trust, of community, of unfortunate incidents. Jamal watched from the living room. No mention of my name, he said. They're managing risk, Crane replied. You're a variable. Denise crossed her arms. Here's a kid. The mayor concluded with a promise of an internal review. Jamal laughed. Internal to who? Another offer arrived. Then another. Each one higher. Each one quieter. Crane laid them out in order. This is escalation disguised as compromise. Jamal paced. His ribs still ached. Nightmares still woke him. I don't want to be their exception, he said. I want them exposed. Crane met his eyes. Then you must accept scrutiny as well. Do it, Jamal said. All of it. The interview aired that night. Jamal sat under studio lights, palms damp, heart steady in a way that surprised him. The interviewer leaned forward. Some critics say your wealth changed the outcome. Jamal nodded. They're right. A murmur rippled through the studio. It shouldn't have, Jamal continued, but it did, and that's a story. The interviewer hesitated. Do you believe Officer Brennan targeted you? Yes. Why? Because he could. Silence stretched. And if you weren't who you are now, the interviewer asked. Jamal didn't look away. I'd still be another black kid they told to behave better next time. The clip went viral. Brennan's attorney held his own press briefing. Officer Brennan acted within protocol, the lawyer said. This is a rush to judgment fueled by class resentment. Jamal watched from his phone. His hiding behind procedure, Denise said. Procedure hides a lot, Jamal replied. Federal investigators arrived the following week, not with sirens, with briefcases. They interviewed officers, dispatchers, medics, bystanders. A woman came forward anonymously. She'd filmed the incident in full. She'd been afraid. They came to my job, she said, voice shaking. Asked why I was lying. Crane recorded everything. Another officer submitted a statement. Then another. Patterns emerged. Language repeated. Reports mirrored. This wasn't a bad night, Jamal said quietly. It was a routine. Crane nodded. Routines are the hardest to dismantle. At night, when the noise faded, Jamal sat alone. He thought about the way Brennan's voice had sounded. Calm. Certain. He thought about how quickly that certainty cracked once power shifted. It made him sick. Denise joined him on the balcony. You don't have to carry this alone. I know, Jamal said, but I'm the one they hurt. She nodded, and you're the one they didn't expect. The city announced Brennan's formal indictment. The headline read, Officer charged amid federal investigation. Not beaten, not assaulted. Charged. Jamal folded the paper. Words matter. They always have, Crane said. Another settlement offer arrived, the largest yet. Crane didn't slide it across this time. Jamal looked at it anyway. This could end everything, Denise said carefully. Jamal shook his head. It would end the noise, not the truth. Crane closed the folder. Then we continue. That night, Jamal dreamed of the street again. The lights, the baton, the moment before impact. But this time, when the baton stopped midday, it didn't fall. It hovered, waiting. Jamal woke up breathing hard, understanding something new. Two systems had collided over his body. One built to protect power, one forced to answer when power looked back. And neither would let him walk away unchanged. The footage went live at 9:02 a.m. No commentary. No banner. No voiceover explaining context or intent. Just raw video released simultaneously across platforms. Body cam, street footage, audio intact. Jamal didn't watch it immediately. He sat at the kitchen table with his hands folded, staring at the wood grain as if it might move. His phone vibrated nonstop beside him. Denise stood at the sink, not washing anything, just holding glass and breathing slowly. Crane checked his watch. The first hour will be the loudest. What if it doesn't change anything? Jamal asked. It already has, Crane said. You just can't hear it yet. By noon, the city was on fire without a single flame. The video showed everything. The pause before the shove, the calm voice, the baton strike delivered without warning, the lie spoken into the radio afterward. Most damning of all was the tone, unhurried, practiced, bored. Jamal finally watched it alone in his room. He flinched when the baton hit, even though he knew it was coming. His own voice sounded younger than he remembered, smaller. I didn't do anything. The words sat in the air unanswered. He closed the laptop and sat very still. At the precinct, panic replaced procedure. Phones rang unanswered. Supervisors argued behind closed doors. Officers avoided the locker room, the hallway, each other. A whiteboard appeared in the conference room listing talking points. An ongoing investigation. An officer's safety. No comment on pending litigation. Someone wrote context matters and underlined it twice. By mid-afternoon, the board was erased. The first resignation came quietly. A mid-level supervisor. Personal reasons. The second followed before sunset. Internal emails leaked. Complaints dating back years. Identical phrasing. Identical outcomes. Insufficient evidence. Officer acted within scope. Case closed. Crane spread the documents across the table like a deck of mock cards. They buried him in process. Denise said, They buried everyone. Crane replied. Brennan was moved to administrative holding. Not jail. Not yet. His attorney spoke again, voice strained this time. Officer Brennan is cooperating fully. Cooperating sounded different now. Smaller. Jamal watched the press conference in silence. That man still doesn't think he did anything wrong, Jamal said. No, Crane agreed. He thinks he did what he was trained to do. The whistleblower came forward at dusk. A former dispatcher. Mid-30s. Tired eyes. They flagged certain names, she said on camera. Certain neighborhoods. Certain kids. Jamal watched her testimony with his arms wrapped around himself. Did they ever flag me before? He asked. Crane checked the logs. Yes. How many times? Crane hesitated. More than once. Jamal swallowed. For what? Existing in the wrong place. The city council emergency session lasted 6 hours. Protesters gathered outside, signs raised, voices hoarse but steady. No fires, no broken windows, just names. Jamal Harris, others before him, others who never made it this far. Inside, council members spoke carefully. This is not indicative of our values. Jamal shook his head at the screen. Then what are your values? Denise muted the TV. They are trying to survive. The interview requests multiplied. Morning shows, night shows, panels, podcasts. Crane filtered them ruthlessly. 1, he said, controlled, no debate format. Jamal nodded. I'll do it. The studio was colder than expected. Lights too bright, chair too low. The host smiled professionally. Thank you for being here. Jamal didn't smile back. When you watched the footage, the host asked, What did you feel? Jamal paused. I felt tired. The host blinked. Tired. Tired of explaining pain, Jamal said. Tired of proving it happened. Silence stretched. Some argue, the host continued carefully, that releasing this footage endangers officers. Jamal leaned forward. What endangered me? The question landed heavy. The host cleared his throat. What do you want now? Jamal thought of the street. The baton. The envelope. I want patterns broken, he said. Not payouts. That night, the Department of Justice announced formal charges. civil rights violations, excessive force, falsification of reports. Brennan's mugshot followed. Not defiant, not remorseful, blank. Jamal stared at it longer than he meant to. That's the face that decided I didn't matter, he said quietly. Denise rested a hand on his shoulder. It doesn't get to decide anymore. Messages poured in from across the country. Parents, teachers, former officers. One message stopped him. I was 16 when this happened to me. No one believed me. Thank you for making them look. Jamal stared at the screen until the words blurred. Crane watched him. This is a part they don't show. What part? The cost. The city issued an apology, a statement, carefully worded. We regret the incident and acknowledge the community's pain. No names, no ownership. Jamal folded the printed copy and set it aside. They still don't see me, he said. They see the pressure, Crane replied. That's how institutions feel. Late that night, Jamal stood on the balcony again. Sirens passed in the distance. Slower now, more cautious. He thought about how close everything had come to disappearing. How easily his story could have ended as a footnote. Exposure hadn't healed him, but it had cracked something open. Not justice, visibility. And one scene, the system could no longer pretend it had been blind. Jamal exhaled, long and steady. Tomorrow, the trial would begin, and nothing would ever be hidden the same way again. Cole Brennan had always believed the uniform would protect him. He sat alone in the interrogation room now, sleeves rolled up, badge removed and sealed in an evidence bag like a relic from a dead language. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Too loudly. Every second sounded like accusation. Across the glass, two federal investigators reviewed files without looking at him. Brennan leaned back in his chair. I've answered everything. One of them finally looked up. You've repeated the same answer. Because it's the truth. You followed protocol. Yes. You perceived a threat. Yes. The investigator nodded, unimpressed, then explained the pause. Brennan frowned. What pause? The 7 seconds, the investigator said, tapping the screen. Between contact and force. Brennan shifted. Situational judgment. The other investigator spoke for the first time. You weren't rushed. You weren't surrounded. You weren't under attack. Brennan's jaw tightened. That kid was Moody. Silence followed. The investigator closed the file. That's not a threat. Jamal arrived at the courthouse under escort he never asked for. Metal barricades lined the steps. Protesters stood on both sides of the street, some holding signs, others holding silence like a weapon. He walked between his mother and Crane, shoulders squared, breathing measured. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with low conversation. Reporters filled the benches. Brennan sat at the defense table, suit ill-fitting, hair neatly trimmed as if appearance might restore authority. When Brennan looked up, Jamal didn't flinch. Their eyes met. Brennan looked away. The judge entered. The room rose. The gavel struck once. Order. The prosecutor spoke plainly. This case is not about one mistake, she said. It is about a pattern of behavior protected by silence and procedure. She played the footage again. In the courtroom, there was nowhere to look but forward. Jamal felt his ribs ache in memory. His hands curled into fists. This is what certainty looks like, the prosecutor continued. Certainty that there will be no consequence. The defense objected. The judge overruled. Witnesses followed. The nurse from the ER. The woman who filmed the incident. The former dispatcher. Each voice added weight. Context. Pattern. The dispatcher's voice shook. We were told not to log certain calls. The defense attorney stood. Told by whom? The dispatcher swallowed. Supervisors. Which supervisors? She named them. A murmur spread through the room. Brennan took the stand on the third day. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat. I did my job, he said. The prosecutor approached. You struck Jamal Harris without warning. I perceived resistance. You struck him after he was compliant. I disagree. You wrote in your report that he swung first. Yes. The prosecutor displayed the footage. freezing the frame before contact. Show the swing. Brennan stared at the screen. It's implied. The prosecutor nodded. So you assumed. Brennan bristled. Based on experience. With whom? The prosecutor asked quietly. Brennan hesitated. With kids like him. The defense objected violently. Sustained. But the question lingered. During recess, Jamal sat in a quiet room with Denise. She held his hand. You don't have to stay. I do, Jamal said. I need to see it end. Crane entered. The jury is listening. Jamal looked up. Are they hearing the right things? They are hearing consistency, Crane said. And they are hearing absence. Absence of what? Remorse. Closing arguments came swiftly. The defense spoke of stress, of danger, of split-second decisions. The prosecutor spoke of time. 7 seconds, she said. That's how long it took to choose. She turned toward the jury. And choices of consequences. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Jamal waited in a hallway that smelled like old paper and polish. His knee bounced uncontrollably. Denise squeezed his hand. No matter what happens. I know, Jamal said. I know. The doors opened. The jury filed back in. The 4 persons stood. On the count of civil rights violation, we find the defendant guilty. Jamal closed his eyes. On the count of excessive force, guilty. A breath he didn't know he was holding escaped him. On the count of falsification of reports, guilty. The courtroom erupted. The judge struck the gavel repeatedly. Order. Brennan stood motionless. Sentencing was scheduled for a later date. Brennan was remanded into custody. As officers approached him, he looked toward Jamal again. This time, there was something else in his eyes. Not regret. Fear. Jamal watched him disappear through the side door. He didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He felt tired. Outside, cameras surged forward. How does it feel? Someone shouted. Jamal stopped. He turned slowly. It feels like accountability, he said. Not closure. Someone asked, is this justice? Jamal considered the question carefully. It's a beginning, he said. Not a repair. That night, alone in his room, Jamal sat on the edge of his bed. The trial was over, but his body still remembered. The way the light flashed, the sound of the baton, the pause before impact. Justice hadn't erased any of it. He picked up his phone and reread the message from the 16-year-old. Thank you for making them look. Jamal typed back slowly. I'm sorry it took this long. He set the phone down. Outside, the city hummed, unchanged and altered at once. Cole Brennan had fallen. But Jamal understood something clearly now. One conviction did not dismantle a system. It only proved that systems could bleed. And bleeding systems always fought to survive. The sentence came down on a gray morning. Jamal sat in the same courtroom, the same bench, the same air heavy with anticipation and fatigue. Brennan stood again, hands clasped, eyes forward. The judge read the terms carefully, each word deliberate. Prison time, loss of badge, permanent record, no heroics, no speeches, just consequence. Jamal listened without flinching. He waited for something, relief, satisfaction, triumph, to arrive. It didn't. When it was over, people stood. Some cried. Some applauded. Cameras clicked like insects. Jamal remained seated until Denise touched his arm. We can go. Outside, the crowd pressed close. Do you forgive him? Someone asked. Jamal stopped walking. That's not the point. But do you? Another voice insisted. He looked toward the steps where Brennan had walked days earlier, confident, protected. Forgiveness isn't a substitute for accountability, Jamal said. And accountability doesn't erase harm. He turned away before they could ask more. The days that followed were quieter. Too quiet. The call slowed. The headlines moved on. Another story took center stage, as they always did. Crane met Jamal in his office, sunlight cutting across stacks of folders. The civil case proceeds. Settlements are back on the table. Jamal nodded. With conditions. Crane smiled faintly. Of course. Independent oversight. Body cam transparency, mandatory reporting, civilian review with subpoena power, money fund structure, Jamal said, not silence. Crane closed the folder. You've changed the terms. The first night without court, Jamal didn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw the pause again. 7 seconds stretched into an eternity. He woke drenched in sweat, heart racing. Denise knocked softly and sat on the edge of his bed. You're safe. I know, Jamal said. My body doesn't. She nodded. That's a part people don't understand. Therapy came next. A small office, soft voice, no cameras. The therapist asked, "What do you feel when you hear sirens now?" Jamal considered it. Small. And when people call you brave? Angry. Why? Because bravery implies choice, Jamal said. I didn't choose this. The foundation launched quietly. No gala. No press release. Legal aid for victims of police abuse. Independent investigators. Mental health support for families. Jamal insisted his name not be on the building. Visibility can help, Crane said. So can focus, Jamal replied. Letters arrived daily. Some grateful. Some furious. Some confessional. One letter was handwritten, shaky. I was an officer for 20 years. I knew men like Brennan. I stayed quiet. I'm sorry. Jamal folded it carefully. Another letter came from a mother whose son hadn't survived his stop. You got justice. We didn't. Jamal sat with that one for a long time. A month later, Jamal returned to school. The hallways felt narrower. Familiar faces watched him carefully, unsure which version of him they were allowed to approach. The principal shook his hand. We're honored to have you back. Jamal nodded politely. In class, Marcus slid into the seat beside him. You good? Jamal shrugged. I'm here. That counts, Marcus said. Maybe it did. At a community forum, Jamal sat unstage beside activists, lawyers, officials. A council member spoke earnestly about reform. Jamal waited his turn. Policies don't protect people, he said into the microphone. People do. And people fail when systems teach them they won't be held accountable. Applause followed. He didn't bask in it. Afterward, a young boy approached him, eyes wide. Are you famous? Jamal crouched to his level. No, but you were on TV. That doesn't make me safe, Jamal said gently. It just made me heard. The boy frowned, thinking hard. Will it happen again? Jamal didn't lie. Yes. But maybe, he added, not as easily. The appeal was filed, as expected. Crane informed him calmly. Standard procedure. Jamal sighed. So it continues. Justice isn't a moment, Crane said. It's maintenance. One evening, Jamal stood on the balcony again. The city looked the same. Different. Both. Denise joined him, handing him a cup of tea. You did something important. I lost something too, Jamal said. She nodded. Both can be true. He watched the police cruiser roll past below, slower than usual. What if they changed back? Jamal asked quietly. They might, Denise said. That's why it can't just be you. Later, alone, Jamal wrote in a notebook he kept hidden. Not statements, not speeches, just memories. The sound of shoes on pavement, the weight of a baton, the pause. He wrote until his hand cramped. Justice had taken something from Brennan, but it had taken something from Jamal too. Certainty, innocence, silence. He closed a notebook. Tomorrow, he would keep going. Not because he wanted to, because stopping would mean letting the system decide the cost. And Jamal had learned, at last, that justice always took something. The question was whether it took it from the right person. The street looked smaller in daylight. Jamal stood at the corner where it had happened, hands in his jacket pockets, breath steady. The neon sign over the corner store still flickered, stubborn as memory. The pavement bore no mark of what had occurred, no outline, no stain, no plaque. The city had moved on without ceremony. A bus hissed to a stop. Doors folded open. People stepped around him, unaware or unwilling to look. Denise waited a few steps back, giving him space without leaving him alone. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I know," Jamal replied. He stayed anyway. A cruiser rolled past, slower than before. The officer inside kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward. No pause, no stay. Jamal watched until it disappeared. Time had settled into a different shape since the trial. Not quieter, just less sharp. The calls were fewer. The interviews rare. The foundation ran on schedules and spreadsheets instead of urgency. Crane updated him once a week. 2 departments have adopted the oversight model, he said during one call. Another is considering it. Considering isn't doing, Jamal replied. True, Crane said, but it's movement. Jamal ended the call and stared at the ceiling, counting the faint cracks he hadn't noticed before. At school, routine returned in fragments. Homework, bells, lockers slamming shut. Teachers treated him carefully, like a bruise. Some avoided him altogether. Others tried too hard. In history class, a substitute stumbled through a lesson on civil rights, voice wavering when he reached the present day. He glanced at Jamal, then away. Jamal raised his hand. "Can we talk about now?" The substitute hesitated. "We're a bit short on time." "We always are," Jamal said. A few students nodded. Others looked down. After class, Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Jamal said. "I did." The appeal hearing came and went without drama. The conviction held. Jamal felt nothing when the notice arrived. No spike of relief. No release. Just confirmation. "That's normal," the therapist said. "Your nervous system is still recalibrating." "How long does that take?" She smiled gently. "Longer than people think." One afternoon, Jamal visited the Foundation's small office downtown. No sign on the door, just a number. A woman sat at the front desk, sorting files. She looked up and froze. "Yo." "I know," Jamal said. "I'm just here to listen." He sat with a father whose son had been stopped for matching a description. With a college student who dropped out after a night in a holding cell that never made the news. With a grandmother who kept every document in a manila folder worn thin by years of handling. They didn't ask about money. They asked what to do next. Jamal answered when he could. When he couldn't, he said so. That felt like honesty. A community mural went up 2 blocks from the courthouse. Faces, names, dates. Jamal's name appeared near the center, smaller than others. He didn't attend the unveiling. He walked past later, alone, hood up, reading the names under his breath. Some ended in ellipses. At night, the dreams changed. The pause shortened. The baton missed. The sound faded. He woke calmer, not healed. Healing, he'd learned, wasn't a finish line. It was maintenance. Months later, Jamal stood on a small stage in a library auditorium. No cameras, no lights, just folding chairs and a low hum of conversation. He spoke plainly. "I didn't win," he said. "I survived." A hand raised. "Would you do it again?" Jamal considered the question. "I wouldn't choose it," he said, "but I wouldn't give it back." Another hand. "Are you hopeful?" Jamal paused. "I'm careful." That seemed to satisfy them. On the anniversary of the stop, Jamal returned to the street at dusk. The store was closing. The neon sign finally dark. He stood where he'd fallen and breathed. A memory surfaced, not of the baton, but of the moment before. The ordinary quiet. The false safety. He let it pass. Denise joined him. "Ready?" "Yeah." They walked home together. Later, Jamal sat at his desk, notebook open. He wrote one last entry. "Justice didn't fix me. It didn't fix the city. It didn't even fix the system. But it named the harm. And naming is a beginning." He closed the notebook and placed it in the drawer with the envelope, the one that had changed everything. He hadn't thrown it away. He hadn't framed it. It was a record. Outside, a siren wailed. Brief, distant, moving on. Jamal listened without flinching. The sound didn't own him anymore. He stood, turned off the light, and looked out at the city. It would make its choices tomorrow. So would he. After the sirens, after the headlines, after the noise, what remained was white, quiet, relentless, shared. Jamal exhaled and stepped forward, not toward closure, but toward continuity. Because justice, he'd learned, wasn't an ending. It was what came after. The city announced reforms in a press release Jamal read 3 days late. New training protocols, revised use of force guidelines, expanded review boards. The language was clean, careful, designed to reassure without committing too much too fast. Jamal sat at his desk, scrolling slowly. They always announce, he muttered. Denise looked up from the sink. Announcements are cheaper than change. He closed the laptop. But they are not nothing. No, she agreed. They are not nothing. The first setback came quietly. A neighboring city declined to adopt the oversight framework. The police chief cited budget constraints and officer morale. Crane delivered the news over coffee. They're watching what happens here first. Jamal frowned. Watching who blinks. Crane smiled thinly. Exactly. Jamal spoke less now. By choice. He declined interviews. Passed speaking requests to others. He learned how to say no without apology. You don't owe visibility forever, the therapist told him. I know, Jamal said, but I owe attention. He volunteered with the foundation twice a week, mostly behind the scenes, reading intake forms, connecting families to lawyers, sitting quietly when words ran out. One afternoon, a teenage girl sat across from him, eyes fixed on the floor. They said I was aggressive, she whispered. Jamal nodded. They always do. She looked up sharply. How do you live with it? He didn't answer right away. I don't live with it, he said finally. I live beside it. She considered that. Does it ever leave? No, Jamal said, but it stops being the only thing in the room. At school, a debate flared in civics class. Police brutality is exaggerated, a student said. Most cops are good. The teacher glanced at Jamal, uncertain. Jamal raised his hand. Both can be true, he said, and irrelevant. The room stilled. What matters, Jamal continued, is what happens when the system protects the harm instead of the people. The student scoffed. You got rich off it. Jamal felt a familiar tightening in his chest. I got hurt first, he said quietly. The money just made it visible. No one argued after that. Brennan's appeal hearing date was set. The notification sat unopened on Jamal's desk for a full day. When he finally read it, his reaction surprised him. Nothing surged. Nothing dropped. Denise watched him carefully. You okay? Yes, Jamal said. I'm just done centering him. She smiled. That's growth. The Foundation's first annual report came out in late spring. Jamal skimmed the numbers. Cases supported. Departments audited. Policies amended. Progress measured in increments, not victories. Crane pointed to a section. This is where it starts compounding. Jamal nodded. As long as it outlives me. Crane raised an eyebrow. You planning on leaving? Jamal shook his head. No, just planning on not being the face forever. A memorial was held downtown for victims whose cases never reached court. Candles, names read aloud. Families standing shoulder to shoulder. Jamal stood in the back, hood up, listening. When a mother collapsed halfway through reading her son's name, Jamal moved forward without thinking. He steadied her arm. She leaned into him, sobbing. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to. It's okay, Jamal said. You're allowed. Afterward, she asked his name. He told her. She nodded slowly. Thank you for not disappearing. Jamal swallowed. I almost did. That summer, Jamal took his first trip alone. No security. No itinerary. He walked unfamiliar streets, sat in parks, listened to strangers argue about ordinary things. Once, a patrol car slowed near him. Habit tensed his body. The car kept moving. Jamal exhaled, surprised by how long he'd been holding his breath. The call came late one night. A city council member, hesitant, careful. We're revisiting the oversight proposal. The voice said, Your framework. Jamal sat up. Why now? Because another video surfaced. The council member admitted. Different department. Jamal closed his eyes. And people recognize a pattern. He met with the council 2 weeks later. No cameras. No speeches. Just questions. How do we ensure compliance? What prevents retaliation? What does success look like? Jamal answered methodically. Success looks boring, he said. Fewer headlines. Fewer funerals. Silence followed. The vote passed narrowly. That night, Jamal returned to the notebook. He wrote less now. Shorter entries. Change is slower than pain. But it's faster when shared. He paused, pen hovering. Then he wrote one more line. What remains unfinished must be carried, not worshipped. On the first day of fall, Jamal walked past the courthouse again. No crowd, no cameras, just steps worn smooth by years of decisions. He thought about how many stories ended here without witnesses. He placed his hand briefly on the stone, then pulled it away. Some things didn't need ceremony. At home, Denise cooked dinner while Jamal set the table. You ever wish you'd never opened that envelope? She asked gently. Jamal considered it. Sometimes. And the rest of the time. I'm glad I did, he said, but not because of what it gave me. Because of what it took, she asked. Yes, Jamal said, and what it forced into the open. Later, alone in his room, Jamal looked out at the city lights. They blinked steadily, indifferent to justice, immune to narrative. He liked that about them. The work wasn't done. It never would be, but it no longer belonged to him alone. Jamal turned off the light and lay back, listening to the city breathe. What remained unfinished would continue tomorrow, and tomorrow, for the first time in a long while, felt survivable. The morning Jamal decided to stop waiting for permission, the city looked ordinary. That mattered to him. No sirens, no banners, no breaking news alerts. Just traffic easing into motion and storefronts lifting their gates. Ordinary meant the work could happen without spectacle. He met Crane early, not in an office but at a small cafe near the courthouse. No security detail. No press. The barista asked for a name. Jamal, he said. Nothing else. Crane slid a thin folder across the table. The board is seated. Independent counsel approved. Budget locked. Jamal nodded. Timelines. Quarterly audits. Public summaries. Subpoena authority survives appeal. Good, Jamal said, then stepped back. Crane raised an eyebrow. From what? From me, Jamal said. I don't need to be the front. Crane considered it, then smiled. That might be the most radical thing you've done. The first meeting of the Oversight Board was unremarkable by design. A conference room, fluorescent lights, a pot of coffee that burned too long. People who had learned the hard way to listen before speaking. Jamal sat at the end of the table, not the head. A retired judge chaired the meeting. A social worker took notes. A former patrol officer spoke carefully about training gaps without defending them. When it was Jamal's turn, he kept it brief. Measure outcomes, he said, not intentions. They nodded. They wrote it down. That was enough. At school, Jamal finished the semester quietly. No assemblies. No announcements. His name returned to roll call without pause. On the last day, Marcus leaned back in his chair. So what's next? Jamal shrugged. Graduation. Maybe college. Maybe not. Marcus smiled. Normal stuff. Jamal smiled back. Normal enough. The appeal concluded in late winter. Denied. Jamal read the notice once and filed it away without ceremony. He didn't mark the day. He didn't post a statement. He walked home and cooked dinner with Denise. They ate at the table without the TV on. You good? She asked. I think so, Jamal said. I'm learning how not to carry it all the time. She nodded. That's a skill. Spring arrived slowly. Jamal spent more time outdoors, parks, sidewalks, bus stops. He let the city brush past him without bracing for impact. Once, a cruiser stopped at a light beside him. The officer glanced over, neutral, then looked away. Jamal felt the old tension flicker and pass. Progress. he realized wasn't the absence of fear. It was a shortening of its stay. The Foundation hired a new director. Experienced, unflashy, effective. Jamal signed the papers and declined the photo. "You sure?" the director asked. "Your presence helps." "Your presence will help longer," Jamal said. He meant it. On a warm evening, Jamal returned to the library auditorium where he'd spoken months earlier. Different crowd, same folding chairs. He listened more than he talked. When he did speak, it was practical. How to file a complaint. How to preserve evidence. Who to call when the first answer is no. Afterward, a woman approached him, hesitant. "My son's case won't go anywhere," she said. "They told us." Jamal didn't argue. "They say that a lot." "What do?" "We document," Jamal said. "We persist. And we don't let them isolate you." She nodded, eyes wet but steady. "Thank you." On the anniversary of the verdict, Jamal didn't return to the street. He went somewhere else. A small cemetery at the edge of town, where his father was buried under a modest stone. Nathaniel Harris. Dates. No title. Jamal stood quietly, hands in his pockets. "I didn't know you," he said aloud. "I don't forgive you, but I understand what you left behind." The wind moved through the trees. Nothing answered. That was fine. He turned and left without looking back. Graduation came and went. Denise cried. Jamal smiled. A camera flashed. Then life continued. That night, Jamal sat at his desk and opened the notebook one last time. He read the early pages, the rawness, the anger, the weight. He read the middle, strategy, structure, names. He read the end, short lines, quiet to resolve. He tore out the first page and folded it carefully, not to erase it, to carry it. He closed the notebook and placed it back in the drawer. Later, Jamal walked the city after dark. Lights reflected in windows. Conversations floated past. A siren wailed somewhere far off and moved on. He paused at a crosswalk, waiting for the signal. When it changed, he stepped forward with the others. No one made space for him. No one blocked his way. That felt right. Months later, a report landed on his phone. Complaints down. Body cam compliance up. Disciplinary timeline shortened. Not solved. Not finished. Improved. Jamal forwarded it to the board and put the phone away. On a quiet night, Denise found him on the balcony again. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," Jamal said. "I think I finally understand it." "Understand what?" "That justice isn't a shield," he said. "It's a responsibility. And it gets heavier if you try to hold it alone." She smiled. "You're not alone." "I know," Jamal said. The city kept breathing. Mistakes were made. Corrections followed. Then more mistakes. Jamal stayed. Others joined. The work widened. He didn't become a symbol. He became a participant. And that, he decided, was a point. Jamal stepped inside, closed the door, and turned off the light. Tomorrow would come with its weight. He would carry only what was his.